All good.
All right. We're back with Mr. John Weeks. We're going for some more rules for radicals because we be radical and we need
Oh,
rules.
yeah.
Yeah, I need to know what the rules are so I can break them. Oh, how was your day? We were just talking about swimming lessons, but how was your day all in all?
It was very good.
Yeah,
It was beautiful weather. It was good vibes. It was
nice.
productive. And despite the trials and tribulations in this globe, in my small little corner, it was beautiful.
Nice. Yeah.
How was
Yeah.
your day?
My day was it was a day. It was going real smooth right up until that last freaking delivery. It should have taken me 2 hours to deliver, and it ended up taking me over 5 hours. But yeah,
Ouch.
yeah, it was just one of those things, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just one of those things where it's like, okay, well, this is going to go wrong. Oh no, this too. Oh crap, this too. Okay, well, how about this? Oh shit. All right, let's deal with this. And it was just one of those things. It wasn't anything like nobody could have done anything to make it any better. It's we have a we have a trailer that's in the shop. And the trailer that's in the shop is in the shop because somebody sideswiped one of the drivers and slid down the side of the trailer, took out the back axle of the
Oh,
trailer. And so it's been in the shop for 3 months. And when it got put in the shop, it got put in the shop like just before the trailer I was pulling today was supposed to go into the shop. And so we couldn't have two trailers in the shop. So we got to wait till the other one comes back. So it's just one of those things. And it was just kind of like, all right, man, we really need to get 17 back because 14 is killing me. So, so it was just one of those things. Not anything crazy, but it was enough to like I was feeling my age after it was all said and done. I was like, man, I'm sore. I don't want to be doing this. I want to go home and have a beer and just chill out. Yeah. So, and it was right after you and I were texting. So I was like, yeah, that should be cool. We should be all right. Everything's going smooth for me today. And as soon as I said that, it was just like everything was just like, oh yeah, let's see if you get home in time, brother. But I got home and my beautiful wife made me a scallop green curry. Oh, it was so good. So
good living.
yeah, so I was like, yep, I am going to eat some of this comfort food. I need to be comforted. So, but yeah, otherwise, man, it's good. It's Holy Week and for the Orthodox. I know the Papists had their Holy Week last week, as well as the ex-Papists who still follow the papal calendar, uh, the Protestants. So they had their Holy Week and Easter last week. But this is Holy Week for us. So tomorrow I have two services, and then Saturday we have two services. And the late night service will go about 4 hours, and then it'll go from late Saturday night into Sunday morning. We'll do a procession around the church, um, and then go in and pray for 2 more hours, and then it'll be Sunday. By the time all's said and done, we will take the Eucharist and we will go to the hall and we will eat a massive meal. So everybody will break the fast together. Well, it's going to be fun. I always enjoy the Pascha. You're exhausted by the time it's all said and done because it's so physically like demanding. But once it's all said and done, you're like, okay, this was worth it. so, so oh, a dog squeaking. But yeah. So that's what we got going on this weekend. So I got four services over the next 2 days to go to.
I'm blessed.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And I have to go clean the church's cemetery. And go pick up trash at the church's cemetery. So it's just cool to have a church's cemetery. I'm like, wait, our church has a cemetery? This is awesome. So, and obviously it faces east because I'm Orthodox. So that's just the way it goes. All right. So enough mumbling and stumbling, and let's get into this text. I haven't listened to this in about a week, but I think I'm fresh enough on it to where I can have plenty to say. This one, like I was telling you last time we we read this one and the next one, next chapter, are actually fairly short. So I think we're going to try to squeeze them both in together and and get both of them knocked out because there's not a whole lot to talk about here. He's talking about this chapter. If you're just listening, you're not reading along. This chapter is called "The Education of an Organizer." This is basically the entire chapter is talking about how do you identify who you should be targeting to propagandize. That's basically what he's doing here. So the building of many mass power organizations to merge into a national popular power force cannot come without many organizers. Since organizations are created in large part by the organizer, we must find out what creates the organizer. This has been the major problem of my years of organizational experience. The finding of potential organizers and their training. For the past 2 years, I have had a special training school for organizers with a full time 15-month program. Its students have ranged from middle class women, activists, to Catholic priests and Protestant ministers of all denominations, from militant Indians to Chicanos to Puerto Ricans to blacks, from all parts of the black power spectrum, excuse me, from Panthers to radical philosophers, from a variety of campus activists, SDS, and others, to a priest who is joining a revolutionary party in South America. Geographically, they have come from campuses and Jesuit seminaries in Boston to Chicanos from tiny Texas towns. Damn those Chicanos from tiny Texas towns. I know their type. Middle class people from Chicago and Hartford and Seattle, and almost every place in between. An increasing number of students come from Canada, from the Indians of the Northwest to the middle class of the maritime provinces. For years before the formal school was begun, I spent most of my time on the education as an organizer of every member of my staff. The education of an organizer requires frequent long conferences on organizational problems, analysis of power patterns, communication, conflict tactics, the education and development of community leaders, and the methods of introduction of new issues. In these discussions, we have found ourselves dealing with quite a range of issues: internal problems of a clique in a Los Angeles organization out to get rid of its organizer, a Christmas tree selling fundraising fiasco in San Jose and why it failed, a massive voter registration drive in a Chicago project which was being delayed in getting started, a group in Rochester, New York, attacking the organizers so that they could get their hot hands on the funds earmarked for organization, and so on. Always the potential organizer's personal experience was used as the bias for teaching. Always after the problem was solved, there would be long sessions in which a postmortem would dissect the specifics and then stitch them into a synthesis, a body of concepts. All experiences are significant only insofar as they are related to and illuminating a central concept. History does not repeat specific situations. If any of the examples in these pages are read isolated from the general concept, they will be nothing more than a series of anecdotes. Everything became a learning experience. Frequently, personal domestic hangups were part of the conferences. An organizer's working schedule is so continuous that time is meaningless. Meetings and caucuses drag endlessly into the early morning hours. Any schedule is marked by constant, unexpected, unscheduled meetings. Work pursues an organizer into his or her home so that either he is on the phone or there are people dropping in. The marriage record of organizers is, with rare exception, disastrous. Further, the tensions, the hours, the home situation, and the opportunities do not argue for fidelity. Also, with rare exception, I have not known really competent organizers who were concerned about celibacy.
Hey,
Here and there,
it gets lonely in a church basement. You know what I'm saying?
I guess so. Well, let's talk about those Catholic priests again. Like, wait, what? What are we doing here?
Yeah, we organizing.
Oh, is that what we're calling it? Here and there are wives and husbands or those in love relationships who understand or are committed to the work and are real sources of strength to the organizer. Besides the full timers, there were the community leaders whom we trained on the job to be organizers. Organizers are not only essential to start and build an organization, they are also essential to keep it going, maintaining interest and activity. Keeping the group's goals strong and flexible at once is a different operation, but still organization. As I look back on the results of those years, they seem to be a potpourri with, I would judge, more failures than successes. Here and there are organizers who are outstanding in their chosen fields and are featured by the press as my trained proteges, but to me, the overall record has been unpromising. Those out of their local communities who were trained on the job achieved certain levels and were at the end of their line. If one thinks of an organizer as a highly imaginative and creative architect and engineer, then the best we have been able to train on the job were skilled plumbers, electricians, and carpenters, all essential to the building and maintenance of their community structure, but incapable of going elsewhere to design and execute a new structure in a new community. Then there were others who learned to be outstanding organizers in particular kinds of communities with particular ethnic groups, but in a different scene with different ethnic groups couldn't organize their way out of a paper bag. Then there were those rare campus activists who could organize a substantial number of students, but they were utter failures when it came to trying to communicate with and organize lower middle class workers. Labor union organizers turned out to be poor community organizers. Their experience was tied to a pattern of fixed points, whether it was definite demands on wages, pensions, vacation periods, or other working conditions, and all of this was anchored into particular contract dates. Once the issues were settled and a contract signed, the years before the next contract negotiation held only grievance meetings about charges on contract violations by either side. Mass organization is a different animal. It is not housebroken. There are no fixed chronological points or definite issues. The demands are always changing. The situation is fluid and ever shifting, and many of the goals are not in concrete terms of dollars and hours, but are psychological and constantly changing, like such stuff as dreams are made on. I have seen labor organizers almost out of their minds from the community organization scene. When labor leaders have talked about organizing the poor, their talk has been based on nostalgia, a wistful look back to the labor organizers of the CIO through the Great Depression of the 30s. Those labor organizers, Powers Hapgood, Henry Johnson, and Lee Pressman, for instance, were primarily middle class revolutionary activists to whom the CIO labor organizing drive was just one of many activities. The agendas of those labor union mass meetings were 10% on the specific problems of that union and 90% speakers on the conditions and needs of the Southern Okies, the Spanish Civil War, and the International Brigade, raising funds for blacks who were on trial in some southern state, demanding higher relief for the unemployed, denouncing police brutality, raising funds for anti Nazi organizations, demanding an end to American sales of scrap iron to the Japanese military complex, and on and on. When did what
Hey, that's American jobs.
yeah, it's like why would labor organizers why would the labor union be interested in any of those things? Like obviously none of that has to do with feeding their children. It's like duh. They were radicals and they were good at their job. They organized vast sectors of middle class America in support of their programs, but they are gone. And any resemblance between them and the present professional labor organizer is only in title. Among the organizers I trained and failed with, there were some who memorized the words and the related experiences and concepts. Listening to them was like listening to a tape playing back my presentation word for word. Clearly, there was little understanding. Clearly, they could not do more than elementary organization. The problem with so many of them was and is their failure to understand that a statement of a specific situation is significant only in its relationship to and its illumination of a general concept. Instead, they see the specific action as a terminal point. They find it difficult to grasp the fact that no situation ever repeats itself, that no tactic can be precisely the same. Then there were those who had trained in schools of social work to become community organizers. Community Organization 101, 102, and 103. They had done field work and acquired even a specialized vocabulary. They call it CO, which to us means conscientious objector, on community org, which to us evokes a huge Freudian fantasy. Basically, the difference between their goals and ours is that they organize to get rid of four legged rats and stop there. We get organized to get rid of four legged rats so we can get on to removing two legged rats.
Wait,
Among
what?
those who,
That's that sounds like genocidal rhetoric to me.
yeah. What I mean, would the four legged rats be actual rats and the two legged rats be Jews? Like, I don't know. Is this anti Semitism? I think it's a dog whistle. I just don't get it. I'm not a dog. I can't understand the whistle. Among those who, disillusioned, reject the formalized garbage they learned in school, the odds are heavily against their developing into effective organizers. One reason is that despite their verbal denunciations of their past training, there is a strong subconscious block against repudiating 2 to 3 years of life spent in this training, as well as the financial cost of these courses. Through these years, I have constantly tried to search out reasons for our failures as well as our occasional successes in training organizers. Our teaching methods, those of others, our personal competency for teaching, and improvised new teaching approaches have and are being examined. Our own self criticism is far more rigorous than that of our most bitter critics. All of us have faults. I know that in a community working as an organizer, I have unlimited patience in talking to and listening to the local residents. Any organizer must have this patience. But among my faults is that in a teaching position at the training institute or at conferences, I become an intellectual snob with unimaginative, limited students, impatient, bored, and inexcusably rude. Well, that's how you write too. So I kind of figured. I have improvised teaching approaches. For example, knowing that one can only communicate and understand in terms of one's experience, we had to construct experience for our students. Most people do not accumulate a body of experience. Most people go through life undergoing a series of happenings which pass through their systems undigested. Happenings become experiences when they are digested, when they are reflected on, related to general patterns, and synthesized. You know, reading this guy's book, I bet he would get along well with Walter Block. We should ask Scott about that.
You know, what's funny is you had mentioned to me in a previous episode about the transcendental argument for God,
Mm.
and he'd sent
Yeah,
me
I think
some
that was
videos.
after our last podcast. We were talking a little bit afterwards. Yeah.
So I was, so I've been listening to some stuff about it, and when he's talking here about, um, he's making this distinction between happenings and experience.
Mm.
Made me think of the distinction that people who I've been listening to talk about the tag, as they call it,
Hmm.
the transcendental argument for God, the distinction they make between um, the evidentialist approach to knowledge and the theoretic approach to knowledge. And one guy I really liked um, read that into the opposition between Plato and Aristotle.
Mm. Yeah.
And then when he's talking, he goes on and on about patterns. And um, I can't help but think how uh, the word pattern is etymologically linked to the word father through the word paternal, how
Mm.
there's an idea of the center. um Derrida rails against what he calls foul logocentrism,
Hmm.
the logos, reason, language, um God being referred to as the living word.
Yeah.
And how, but as you've helped me to see, you can definitely read this book as a satanic work, from him shouting out Lucifer in the beginning, just to the entire way that he approaches his pushing his ideology, his view in human nature, his rhetorical strategy of trying to remove hope so they can then fill you with his ideology. And yet he seems to be interacting with a lot of the same philosophical sort of ground and issues that the Orthodox Christians who are talking about the tag are interacting with.
Mm.
And I was able to kind of see that, and that was really interesting to me.
Yeah,
And a
that is
little later,
interesting.
I don't know if it's this chapter or the next chapter, but basically he's going to compare the organizer to Jesus, and
Yeah, that didn't shock.
it's a
Yeah.
hilarious passage.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's been about a week since I even listened to these. But I wasn't paying that close of attention because I knew it was at least a week away. So I was kind of doing other stuff while it played. But excuse me. Yeah, that is interesting. I never thought about that. The whole paternal pattern, father. That's very striking. Yeah, he's talking about
I love that
general
connection.
patterns. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, if you're into like looking into Plato and stuff, man, like check out check out Lord of Spirits. Like Father Stephen DeYoung shouts out Platonic ideas in Christianity all over the place. But what's funny is, so if you look at the Greek, which is what the New Testament was actually written in Greek originally. So the beginning of the book of John, where it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God." The word that they translate into English as word is actually logos. So it's in the beginning was the logos, and the logos was God, and the logos was with God.
Okay.
And so what it's doing, what John, from what I understand from listening to priests discuss what John's doing in the beginning of the book of John there, is he's taking the poetic. So, like the beginning of Genesis, when it's talking about creation, is a poem, and he's taken that style of poem, and he's making it part of the new covenant. So he's using it to refer to Christ. So he takes that creation poetry and brings that into starting his gospel out with that kind of idea of the creation poetry when referring to Jesus. And so it's like it's also to point back that yeah, the God that was walking with Adam and Eve in the garden was this guy that I'm about to tell you about.
Nice.
So so yeah. But yeah, the fact that you brought up logos, that's really interesting because that's what John's getting at there at the beginning of his gospel. There is meaning to that cliche. We learn from experience. Our job was to shovel those happenings back into the student's system so he could digest them into experience. During a seminar, I would say life is the expectation of the unexpected. The things you worry about rarely happen. Something new, the unexpected, will usually come in from outside the ballpark. You're all nodding as if you understand, but you really don't. What I've said are just words to you. I want you to go to your private cubby holes and think for the next 4 hours. Try to remember all the things you worried about during the last years and whether they ever happened or what did happen, and then we'll talk about it. At the next session, the student reactions were excited. Hey, you're right. Only one out of the 8 big worries I've had ever happened, and even that one was different from the way I worried about it. I understand what you mean. And he did. While the experience of trying to educate organizers has been nowhere so successful as I'd hoped, there was a great deal of education for me and my associates. We were constantly in a state of self examination. First, we learned what the qualities of an ideal organizer are. And second, we were confronted with a basic question whether it was possible to teach or educate for the achieving of these qualities. The area of experience and communication is fundamental to the organizer. An organizer can communicate only within the areas of experience of his audience. Otherwise, there is no communication. The organizer, in his constant hunt for patterns, universalities, and meaning, is always building up a body of experience. Through his
It's the search
imagination,
for the Father.
yeah, yeah, he's definitely searching for something. I think we should call Jordan Peterson. Go make your bed. Through his imagination, he is constantly moving in on the happenings of others, identifying with them, and extracting their happenings into his own mental digestive system, and thereby accumulating more experience. It is essential for communication that he know of their experiences, since one can communicate only through the experiences of the other. It becomes clear that the organizer begins to develop an abnormally large body of experience. He learns the local legends, anecdotes, values, idioms. He listens to small talk. He refrains from rhetoric foreign to the local culture. He knows that worn out words like white racist, fascist pig, and motherfucker have been so spewed out about that using them is now within the negative experience of the local people. Hey man, motherfucker still works. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
and
Watch
I've
Pulp
always
Fiction. Look at the dude's wallet.
that's not badass motherfucker. I I think I've for a long time I've like implicitly, unconsciously believed that all leftists and liberals have read this book. But like now I realize no, they haven't read it. Or if they have, they missed
Yeah, they're not taking it to heart.
this lesson that he's brought up before, this exact thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
where he's like, don't be calling people white racist and
But he
fascist
keeps
pig
calling people
motherfucker.
Nazis anyway. So it's like, it's just like, all right, whatever. You're doing the same thing. You're just doing it with different words.
Oh, the contradictions run deep with this one.
Oh, yeah. 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 The only thing he's consistent about is not being consistent. Because the ends is always power with him. So it doesn't matter. It's not hypocrisy, it's a search for power.
The search for power.
Hmm.
I love it.
So, serving only to identify the speaker as one of those nuts and to turn off any further communication. And yet, the organizer must not try to fake it. He must be himself. I remember a first meeting with Mexican American leaders in a California barrio where they served me a special Mexican dinner. When we were halfway through, I put down my knife and fork, saying, "My God, do you eat this stuff because you like it or because you have to? I think it's as lousy as the Jewish kosher crap I had to eat as a kid." God, he's anti-Semitic. There was a moment of shocked silence, and then everybody roared. Suddenly, barriers began to come down as they all began talking and laughing. They were so accustomed to the Anglo who would rave about the beauty of Mexican food, even though they knew it was killing him. The Anglo who had memorized a few Spanish phrases with the inevitable hasta la vista, that it was a refreshingly honest experience to them. No, the proper Mexican phrase nowadays is "Yo quiero Taco Bell."
Dios mío.
Here, lizard, lizard, lizard. The incident became a legend to many, and you would hear them say, for instance, "He has as much use for that guy as Alinsky has for Mexican food." A number of the Mexican Americans pre- present confessed that they only ate some of those dishes when they entertained an Anglo. The same faking goes on with whites on certain items of black soul food. Bullshit, soul food is delicious. That's because I grew up very poor. So I was basically black from the wallet down. There is a difference between honesty and rude disrespect of another's tradition. The organizer will err far less by being himself than by engaging in professional techniques when the people really know better. It shows respect for people to be honest. As in the Mexican dinner episode, they are being treated as people and not guinea pigs being techniqued. It is most important that this action be understood in context. Prior to my remark, there had been a warm personal discussion of the problems of the people. They knew not only of my concern about their plight, but that I liked them as people. So he's instead of flattering their culture, he's like, "I'll disrespect your culture to win you over." Like, okay. I felt their response in friendship, and we were together. It is in this totality of the situation that I did what otherwise would have been offensive. Yeah, but it's still offensive, dude, because what you're doing is for a purpose. You're not like being genuine. You're not being honest. You're trying to seek, you're using these people. That's what you're doing. So it's offensive. Either way, it's offensive. You twat. There. How do you like them apples? Do Jews eat apples? I don't want to get in trouble. Uh, the qualities we were trying to develop in organizers and the years of attempting to train them included some qualities that, in all probability, cannot be taught. They either had them or could get them only through a miracle from above or below. Other qualities they might have as potentials that could be developed. Sometimes the development of one quality triggered off unsuspected others. I learned to check against the list and spot the negatives. And if it was impossible to develop that quality, at least I could be aware and on guard to try to diminish its negative effect upon the work. Here is the list of the ideal elements of an organizer. The items one looks for in identifying potential organizers and in appraising the future possibilities of new organizers, and the pivot points of any kind of educational curricula for organizers. Certainly, it is an idealized list. I doubt that such qualities in such intensity ever come together in one man or woman. Yet the best of organizers should have them all to a strong extent, and any organizer needs at least a degree of each. Curiosity. What makes an organizer organize? He is driven by a compulsive curiosity that knows no limits. Warning cliches such as knows no limits, I mean, curiosity killed a cat, are meaningless to him, for life is for him a search for a pattern, for similarities and seeming differences, for differences and seeming similarities, for an order in the chaos about us, for a meaning to the life around him and its relationship to his own life. So he's looking for a father, like you said earlier, and the search never ends. Okay. He goes forth with the question as his mark and suspects that there are no answers, only further questions. The organizer becomes a carrier of the contagion of curiosity, for a people asking why are beginning to rebel. The questioning of the hitherto accepted ways and values is the Reformation stage that precedes and is so essential to the revolution. I mean, dude, I mean, it couldn't be any more obvious. He is looking for an order in the chaos about us. That's what a man does. That's what a father does. That's like the purpose of a father. It's just crazy.
Well, pretty soon he's gonna compare himself to the great Father incarnate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll get there.
For a Jewish cat, he has a bit of a white savior complex, I gotta say.
If you can even call Jews white,
That's why I said like I did.
they're more like cream. like like Dave Smith. He's like olive. He's not even white. He's just got that beautiful olive complexion with that raven hair. Just it's dreamy. Here I couldn't disagree more with Freud. In a letter to Marie Bonaparte, he said, "The moment a man questions the meaning and value of life, he is sick. If there is somewhere an answer about life, I suspect that the key to it is finding the core question." Actually, Socrates was an organizer. Socrates. The function of an organizer is to raise questions that agitate that break through the accepted pattern. Socrates, with his goal of know thyself, was raising the internal questions within the individual that are so essential for the revolution, which is external to the individual. So, Socrates, or Socrates, was carrying out the first stage of making revolutionaries. If he had been permitted to continue raising questions about the meaning of life, to examine life, and refuse the conventional values, the internal revolution would soon have moved out into the political arena. Those who tried him and sentenced him to death knew what they were doing.
That's
Yep.
great. It's like
And anybody that is Gen X knew exactly what I was doing when I said Socrates. I'm talking Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, baby. See, this is what happens whenever I record after work, right? Like if I have a whole day off to where I can kind of reflect and get my mind together, like I'm like on point and I'm like clicking on all cylinders. You let me go to work, I get home, my brain's like all mush because I've been listening to audiobooks all day and I've been dealing with drivers around Houston that I want to murder half the time. So I get home and now all I want to do is talk trash.
hey, bringing up deep cut film references, pretty sharp. I
Anyway,
think
you
it's
were going to say something. I'm sorry.
well, I think it's funny. He's basically like, yeah, if Socrates had been allowed to continue asking his questions, he could have overthrown the Athenian government. And it's like, oh, is that what he's trying to do? No wonder they killed him.
Right. In all these years, I thought he was just molesting children like the rest of them Greeks. They were the first Epsteins.
I always thought, well, I didn't always think this way, but the way I think of Socrates now is like he was a war hero. So, but he's kind of an asshole. So he's going around the city, kind of a bum. He's living off the donations from friends and admirers, and he's just making the most powerful and authoritative people feel and look stupid. But he gets a pass because he's a war hero.
Mm.
I think about that sometimes when I see Lindsey Graham on TV because I'm like, you're not a war hero.
Yeah, and you were at Disneyland.
You're you're part Socrates, but not the war
You
hero
just got
part.
the wrong part.
Yeah.
You got the perv part of Socrates. Irreverence. Curiosity and irreverence go together. Curiosity cannot exist without the other. Curiosity asks, is this true? Just because this has always been the way, is this the best or right way of life? The best or right religion, political or economic value, morality? To the questioner, nothing is sacred. He detests dogma, defies any finite definition of morality, rebels against any repression of a free, open search for ideas, no matter where they may lead. He is challenging, insulting, agitating, discrediting. He stirs unrest. As with all life, this is a paradox, for his irreverence is rooted in a deep reverence for the enigma of life and an incessant search for its meaning. It can be argued that reverence for others, for their freedom from injustice, poverty, ignorance, exploitation, discrimination, disease, war, hate, and fear, is not a necessary quality in a successful organizer. All I can say is that such reverence is a quality I would have to see in anyone I would undertake to teach. Imagination. Imagination is the inevitable partner of irreverence and curiosity. How can one be curious without being imaginative? According to Webster's unabridged, imagination is the mental synthesis of new ideas from elements experienced separately. Their broader meaning starts with the notion of mental imaging of things suggested but not previously experienced, and thence expands to the idea of mental creation and poetic idealization, creative imagination. Hold on. So when you say imagination starts with the notion of mental imaging, are you defining the word with its own with the word? I don't think that's allowed. Sounds like he's trying to
I think he's playing games on us.
well, it sounds to me like he's trying to describe he's trying to make imagination synonymous with fantasy. That's that's kind of what I'm getting. I could be wrong, but it sounds like he would really prefer to use fantasy, but fantasy is kind of a pejorative, and he doesn't want to utilize the term fantasy, so he's trying to create this synthesis between imagination and fantasy.
Smuggling it in. He's a fantasy smuggler.
Yeah, yeah. If I ever start an OnlyFans, that's what I'm going to call it, fantasy smuggler. To the organizer, imagination is not only all this, but something deeper. It is the dynamism that starts and sustains him in his whole life of action as an organizer. It ignites and feeds the force that drives him to organize for change. There was a time when I believed that the basic quality that an organizer needed was a deep sense of anger against injustice, and that this was the prime motivation that kept him going. I now know that it is something else. Excuse me. This abnormal imagination that sweeps him into a close identification with mankind and projects him into its plight. He suffers with them and becomes angry at the injustice and begins to organize the rebellion. Clarence Darrow put it on more of a self interest basis. I had a vivid imagination. Not only could I put myself in the other person's place, but I could not avoid doing so. My sympathies always went out to the weak, the suffering, and the poor, realizing their sorrows. I tried to relieve them in order that I myself might be relieved. Imagination is not only the fuel for the force that keeps organizers organizing, it is also the basis for effective tactics and action. The organizer knows that the real action is in the reaction of the opposition. To realistically appraise and anticipate the probable reactions of the enemy, he must be able to identify with them, to, in his imagination, and foresee their reactions to his actions.
Okay, so that line right there about the action being in the reaction,
Yeah.
that line is often referenced by the great Scott Horton.
Yes.
And so when I was listening to um, this chapter this week, and then that line came at me, I was like, wow, like if I was if I was going to sort of um, give the elevator description of this book to someone, aside from like the Tommy Salmons frame of reference where you can see uh, this book through a Christian perspective and see its like satanic commitments, I would point to that line. Um, so Scott really nailed that one.
Mm, yeah. Scott has a way of nailing things. He's pretty good at this stuff. That's why
100%.
that's why we're his underlings.
That's right.
We're like
Minion,
his we're his, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We're his little trolls or his minions.
his little lovable Twinkie characters.
Hmm. A sense of humor. Back to Webster's unabridged. You need to define sense of humor. This guy's ridiculous. That's one of the things about this writing that drives me crazy is he's so long-winded to say like the most like normal stuff. It's like, dude, nothing you're saying here is as highbrow as you think it is. Like you're just some punk like gang leader who's trying to start a gang not based on violence because you're probably a pussy, like a sense of humor. Back to Webster's unabridged, humor is defined as the mental faculty of discovering, expressing, or appreciating ludicrous or absurdly incongruous elements in ideas, situations, happenings, or acts, or a changing and uncertain state of mind. Yeah, you're giving me a changing and uncertain state of mind. The organizer, searching with a free and open mind, void of certainty, hating dogma, finds laughter not just a way to maintain his sanity, but also a key to understanding life. So, Dave Smith is actually a political organizer because he's a comic that tells political jokes. Gotcha.
Volodymyr
Like,
Zelensky.
I think the only thing he's ever organized is his wife and his children going to the zoo or something. But yeah, I don't
Volodymyr
think it.
Zelensky is a great strategic organizer.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, life is a tragedy, and the converse of tragedy is comedy. One can change a few lines in any Greek tragedy, and it becomes a comedy, and vice versa. Knowing that contradictions are the signposts of progress, he is ever on the alert for contradictions. A sense of humor helps him identify and make sense out of them. Humor is essential to a successful tactician, for the most potent weapons known to mankind are satire and ridicule. Oh, you'd be loving this podcast right about now. A sense of humor enables him to maintain his perspective and see himself for what he really is, a bit of dust that burns for a fleeting second. A sense of humor is incompatible with the complete acceptance of any dogma, any religious, political, or economic prescription for salvation. It synthesizes with curiosity, irreverence, and imagination. The organizer has a personal identity of his own that cannot be lost by absorption or acceptance of any kind of group discipline or organization. I now begin to understand what I stated somewhat intuitively in how you say it, Reveal for Radicals almost 20 years ago
In
that the
the
org
in the audio that I was listening to, it sounded like he was saying reveille,
Reveille.
but that's not reveille, right?
I don't think so.
And it's the French.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't,
It's
I mean,
French motherfucker.
I know very little French. Very little. Like I took French class in seventh grade. My dad taught me a phrase that got me suspended from school. I didn't know I was telling the teacher to kiss my ass. I just said what my dad told me to say. But
That's great.
I know like croissant because of Dennis Leary's bit on croissants. And then I know bit mon chou, which means kiss my ass, and allons pique toi, which means want to fuck. And that's all I know.
That's all you need. Tell someone off, pick someone up, and get breakfast. It's all good.
I guess I could use a beer, but I don't know how to say that. So I'll probably die of dehydration if I were stuck in France. So, Reveille for radicals, almost 20 years ago, that the organizer, in order to be part of all, can be part of none. A bit of a blurred vision of a better world. Much of an organizer's daily work is detailed, repetitive, and deadly in its monotony. In the totality of things, he is engaged in one small bit. It is as though, as an artist, he is painting a tiny leaf. It is inevitable that sooner or later he will react with, "What am I doing spending my whole life just painting one little leaf? The hell with it, I quit." What keeps him going is a blurred vision of a great mural where other artists, organizers are painting their bits, and each piece is essential to the total.
Okay, so this calls back to when I was talking about like juxtaposing what his project with Europeans building great cathedrals
Mm.
in the Middle Ages, where it would take a couple hundred years to build it. So some guy's working on it his whole life. He's never going to get to see the completed.
There's a Tolkien book. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm trying to figure out, I can't remember the name of the story, but there's a Tolkien story where it starts off with this, it's like something about a journey, and it starts off with this artist painting this tree. He's drawing this tree, he's constructing a tree, and then he gets called out away from the artwork and goes on this journey on his bicycle. And you find out like halfway through, I can't remember the name of the story, but you find out like halfway through the story or three quarters of the way through the story that he's actually, that he was drawing the tree that he is now traveling. And that's just kind of what that reminds me of. And
I
I
like
just
that.
wonder how much he's pulling out of Tolkien. I can't remember the name. I'm not a huge Tolkien fan. I know about the story, and I've listened to it on audiobook, but I don't remember what it's called. So any of you Tolkien fans out there, I apologize. I'm sure y'all are screaming at me right now. I don't remember the name of the story, but I just heard somebody talking about this story the other day, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that story. That was an interesting story," but I don't remember what it's called.
That's pretty cool because I didn't even think about like, oh, the leaf, the tree. But obviously
Yeah.
the tree has massive symbolic
Yeah. Yeah,
weight.
like the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the tree of life, right? So they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil before they were like of age and ready to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So they had to be cut off from the tree of life. So then anything that hangs from a tree becomes cursed, according to uh, Judaism. But Moses had to hold up a tree, right? The snake on the staff, in order for the Israelites to look upon the snake and be cured of the venom. And then Christ gets rid of the curse by being hung on the cross. He's being hung up on the tree, which creates a new tree of life.
So yeah, I didn't even see that, but I was thinking he's
I'm
like,
back, baby.
oh, oh hell yeah. So crates that this is the satanic gesture where he's trying to build something that he's never going to see it come to completion. But then the paradox is he's not actually building some order. He's finding order in the chaos so he can overthrow the existing order, whatever that is.
Right.
And then whatever new order gets established, then you're supposed to overthrow that.
Right. And if you're dependent on yourself to find the order in the chaos, which it never works out properly, because men are flawed and we tend to screw up and not properly identify the order of things. But if you're dependent on yourself or someone else to do that, you're replacing God with an idol, whether that idol be you or the person that you depend on to find that order, right? So father, like the father is a type of God in your life when you're a child. Like I know there's that crow like quote where it says, "Mother is the lips on the is mother is the word for God on the lips of every child." But that's not the truth. Really, father is the word for God on a child that has a father in their life. You know,
Yeah, back to like pattern and paternal and father.
right?
So like I picked that up like a few years ago. I was like, oh, that's really cool. But only like recently, only in the past few months, did I pick up mother linked to the word matter and material through
Mm,
maternal.
yeah.
And there's that idea of the the feminine as like mother nature, and then the father as the pattern, the spiritual, um, the theoretic. And there's such a cool story, a myth that Joseph Campbell talks about. I think he talks about it in The Hare with a Thousand Faces, about it's a Native American story
Mm,
about these children of like the original two gods. They're
mm,
born, but they can't get out of their mother because their father is laying on their mother. So the
mm,
oldest son like pushes his like hands into the father and his legs into his feet into the mother and pushes them
mm.
apart. And so the father becomes the sky and the mother becomes the ground. And when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's cool, like a cool story to tell kids. But then I was like, oh, that's actually what kids do. They actually do, like in a sense, kind of like physically push the parents apart to be between them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like when I think it's Campbell and other like archetypal story theorists talk about like passing through the gateless gate, which is like those cool, I forget what they're called. They're called like, I forget what they're called, but they're like Japanese, in Japanese gardens, it'll be like the cool like wood that comes up and has a cool like top. And there's no door to it. You just like walk through it. But then they call it a gateless gate. But like, what is the
Mm.
gateless gate? And I thought, oh, it's kind of like the mother and the father that you like pass between, like that sort of thing. But yeah, it's like the father is like the sky god, is like, you know, the baby's like with the mom nursing, and the father's like flying around doing cool shit.
Mm.
So, but yeah, of course, like people want to say that like the mother's the god.
Oh no, but it's so interesting that you say it that way because we, like in the Orthodox faith, we refer to the church as her, she, and we call it the new ark because Mary was the ark that carried God to earth, and the church is now the ark where
Is the church
God,
is the
where
church the bride of Christ in Orthodox?
yes, 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 yeah. So it's like it's the matter, and then the Father is the spiritual. Like it's so interesting that you said it that way.
And I know we're triggering all of our feminist fans right now, but
I don't have any of those.
we're not saying I have a fine following of feminists. I'm sure follow me here to listen to this. But we're not saying that like, oh, women are just base matter and men are amazing spirit. It's more like
Well, I am
the
now. No, I'm just
well, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying these are like these like archetypal patterns
yeah.
that men and women interact with differently. They tend to interact with differently, but we're all interacting with both of them. But I love the idea. I guess from one of my friends, super brilliant cat. It's like that there's this battle between like the feminine and the masculine. And I like to do like the thought experiment of like dropping into different societies throughout history and just seeing like which archetype has the upper hand, you know,
Mm.
dropping into like a Genghis Khan raiding group and being like the masculine is holding it down. And then like dropping into like our society and there's like some some like woman at the um World Economic Forum giving a talk about men, violence, and capitalism. Like, goddamn, the masculine's dropping the ball.
Yeah, man, it's such an interest. I'd love for you to write something on that because I would love to read like more detail on how you're thinking about that because that's a very interesting like dynamic that you're putting together there.
I'll
So,
definitely would love to put something together and get your notes on it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Because that would be something I'd like to hear you talk to like an Orthodox priest about and just like sit down like with like Father Turbo or Father John Whiteford or one of these guys that go on podcasts and just have the kind of like the philosophical discussion on how this fits in with faith and how to like kind of paint it on the world and what maybe you're missing or what you're seeing clearly and you know like all those things. I think that would be a very interesting discussion to have.
That'd be awesome. Once I read a little more, I'd love to do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going because I can just kind of go off on a tangent on that because that's like it got my wheels turning on that one. What keeps him going is a blurred vision of a great mural where other artists, organizers are painting their bits, and each piece is essential to the total. You better keep your bits to yourself, buddy. An organized personality. The organizer must be well organized himself so he can be comfortable in a disorganized situation, rational in a sea of irrationalities. It is vital that he be able to accept and work with irrationalities for the purpose of change. With very rare exceptions, the right things are done for the wrong reasons. It is futile to demand that men do the right things for the right reason. This is a fight with a windmill. The organizer should know and accept that the right reason is only introduced as a moral rationalization after the right end has been achieved, although it may have been achieved for the wrong reason. Therefore, he should search for and use the wrong reasons to achieve the right goals. He should be able, with skill and calculation, to use irrationality in his attempts to progress toward a rational world. For a variety of reasons, the organizer must develop multiple issues. First, a wide base membership can only be built on many issues. When we were building our organization in the back of the yards, the Polish Roman Catholic churches in Chicago joined us because they were concerned about the expanding power of the Irish Roman Catholic churches. The Packing House Workers Union was with us, so their rival unions joined, trying to counteract the potential membership and power pickup. We didn't, of course, care why they joined us. We just knew we'd be better off if they did. The organizer recognizes that each person or block has a hierarchy of values. For instance, let us assume that we are in a ghetto community where everyone is for civil rights. A black man there had bought a small house when the neighborhood was first changing, and he wound up paying a highly inflated price, more than 4 times the value of the property. Everything he owns is tied into that house. Urban renewal now is threatening to come in and take it on the basis of a value appraisal according to their criteria, which would be less than a fourth of his financial commitment. He is desperately trying to save his own small economic world. Civil rights would get him to a meeting once a month. Maybe he'd sign some petitions and maybe he'd give $1 here and there. But on a fight against urban renewal's threat to wipe out his property, he would come to meetings every night. Next door to him is a woman who is renting. She is not concerned about urban renewal. She has three small girls, and her major worry is the drug pushers and pimps that infest the neighborhood and threaten the future of her children. She is for civil rights too, but she is more concerned about a community free of pimps and pushers, and she wants better schools for her children. Those
Ah,
are her
homeschool
number
your
one
kids, baby.
priorities. So she should be protesting the CIA, not dealing with civil rights. Next door to her is a family on welfare. Their number one priority is more money. Across the street, there is a family who can be described as the working poor, struggling to get along on their drastically limited budget. To them, consumer prices and local merchants gouging are the number one priorities. Any tenant of a slum landlord living among rats and cockroaches will quickly tell you what his number one priority is, and so it goes. In a multiple issue organization, each person is saying to the other, I can't get what I want alone, and neither can you. Let's make a deal. I'll support you for what you want, and you support me for what I want. Those deals become the program. Not only does a single or even a dual issue organization condemn you to a small organization, it is axiomatic that a single issue organization won't last. An organization needs action as an individual needs oxygen. With only one or two issues, there will certainly be a lapse of action, and then comes death. Multiple issues mean constant action in life. An organizer must become sensitive to everything that is happening around him. He is always learning, and every incident teaches him something. He notices that when a bus has only a few empty seats, the crowd trying to get on will push and shove. If there are many empty seats, the crowd will be courteous and considerate, and he muses that in a world of opportunities for all there would be a change in human behavior for the good. In his constant examination of life and of himself, he finds himself becoming more and more of an organized personality, a well integrated political schizoid. The organizer must become schizoid politically in order not to slip into becoming a true believer. Before men can act, an issue must be polarized. Men will act when they are convinced that their cause is 100% on the side of the angels and that the opposition are on 100% on the side of the devil. He knows that there can be no action until issues are polarized to this degree. I have already discussed an example in the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Particulars that conspicuously omitted all the advantages the colonies had gained from the British and cited only the disadvantages. What I am saying is that the organizer must be able to split himself into two parts. One part in the arena of action, where he polarizes the issue to 100 to nothing and helps to lead his forces into conflict, while the other part knows that when the time comes for negotiations, that it really is only a 10% difference, and yet both parts have to live comfortably with each other. Only a well organized person can split and yet stay together. But this is what the organizer must do. Ego. Throughout these desired qualities is interwoven a strong ego, one we might describe as monumental in terms of solidity. Here we are using the word ego as discussed in the previous chapter, clearly differentiated from egotism. Ego is unreserved confidence in one's ability to do what he believes must be done. An organizer must accept without fear or worry that the odds are always against him. Having this kind of ego, he is a doer and does. The thought of copping out never stays with him for more than a fleeting moment. Life is action, a free and open mind, and political relativity. The organizer in his way of life, he's pushing the subjectivity of political like idealism like to its very core. He has found three different ways of saying the exact same thing in this chapter alone. It is nuts.
He's committed.
The organizer, in his way of life, with his curiosity, irreverence, imagination, sense of humor, distrust of dogma, his self organization, his understanding of the irrationality of much of human behavior, becomes a flexible personality, not a rigid structure that breaks when something unexpected happens. Having his own identity, he has no need for the security of an ideology or a panacea. He knows that life is a quest for uncertainty, that the only certain fact of life is uncertainty, and he can live with it. He knows that all values are relative in a world of political relativity. Because of these qualities, he is unlikely to disintegrate into cynicism and disillusionment. That's where all libertarians are, cynicism and disillusionment. For he does not depend on illusion. Finally, the organizer is constantly creating the new out of the old. He knows that all new ideas arise from conflict, that every time man has had a new idea, it has been a challenge to the sacred ideas of the past and the present, and inevitably a conflict has raged. Curiosity, irreverence, imagination, sense of humor, a free and open mind. We're going to say the same thing once more. An acceptance of the relativity of values and of the uncertainty of life. We just got to make sure we drill this into your head that you need all of these traits to be an organizer. So go work on these traits. All inevitably fuse into the kind of person whose greatest joy is creation. He conceives of creation as the very essence of the meaning of life. In his constant striving for the new, he finds that he cannot endure what is repetitive, like this fucking chapter, and unchanging. For him, hell would be doing the same thing over and over again, but he'd be expecting a different result. This is the basic difference between the leader and the organizer. The leader goes on to build power to fulfill his desires, to hold and wield the power for purposes both social and personal. He wants power himself. The organizer finds his goal in creation of power for others to use. These qualities are present in any free, creative person, whether an educator or in the arts or in any part of life. In Adam Smith's The Money Game, the characteristics of the desirable fund manager are described. It is personal intuition, sensing patterns of behavior. There is always something unknown, undiscerned. You can't just graduate and an analyst into managing funds. What is it the good managers have? It's a kind of locked in concentration and intuition, a feel, nothing that can be schooled. The first thing you have to know is yourself. A man who knows himself can step outside himself and watch his own reactions like an observer. One would think that this was a description of an organizer, but everything creative, whether it is organizing a mutual fund or a mutual society, one is on the hunt for these qualities. Why one becomes an organizer instead of something else is, I suspect, due to a difference of degree, of intensity of specific elements or relationships between them, or accident. Or they were your editor and they just found something better to do with their life. Jesus Christ, dude. Communication. One can lack any of the qualities of an organizer, with one exception, and still be effective and successful. That exception is the art of communication. It does not matter what you know about anything. If you cannot communicate to your people, in that event, you are not even a failure. You're just not there. Communication with others takes place when they understand what you're trying to get across to them. If they don't understand, then you are not communicating, regardless of words, pictures, or anything else. People only understand things in terms of their experience, which means that you must get within their experience. Further communication is a two-way process. If you try to get your ideas across to others without paying attention to what they have to say to you, you can forget about the whole thing. Can you hear the dogs? They're going nuts.
I don't
I
hear
know.
him.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, they're right outside my office door, like barking. They're trying to get outside. They
You
must
need
have heard.
vocal microphone, baby.
They must have heard something. Yeah, that's what $60 will get you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how this thing works so well. I've been complimented on this damn mic so many times, and I'm like, yeah, I spent $60 on this mic like 6 years ago.
I
So,
think your voice would sound good on any mic, to be honest.
uh, That's what my wife said. That's what she fell in love with. Then she met me in person. She was like, "Holy shit, what did I do with myself? What did I get myself into?" I know that I have communicated with the other party when his eyes light up and he responds. I know exactly what you mean. I had something just like that happen to me once. Let me tell you about it. Then I know that there has been communication. Recently, I flew from O'Hare Airport in Chicago to New York. After the jet pulled away from the gate, we heard the familiar announcement. This is your captain speaking. I am sorry to advise you that we are number 18 for takeoff. I am turning off the no smoking sign and will keep you posted. Hell yeah, back when you could smoke on an airplane. I remember those days. I was like 5. Many a captain feels compelled to keep you entertained with an incessant stream of verbal garbage. You will be interested to know that this airplane fully loaded weighs blah, blah, blah tons. You couldn't care less, or our flight plan will carry us over Bezikus, Ohio, and then Junk Spot, etc., etc.
Oh, doesn't
However,
care about flyover country,
yep,
does
flyover country is his enemy. That's why I dislike this guy. I knew there was something about this guy at the core of my disdain for his writing. It's really that he hates flyover country, where the best people in the world are. However, on this trip, the captain of the plane touched on the experience of many of the passengers and really communicated. In the midst of his entertainment, he commented incidentally, I will let you know when we get the takeoff clearance. And from the instant you hear those jets roar for the takeoff until the instant of liftoff, we will have consumed enough fuel for you to drive an automobile from Chicago to New York and back with detours as well. You could hear such comments as, oh, come on, he must be kidding. With the announcement of clearance and the takeoff run, passengers all over the plane were looking at their watches. At the end of approximately 25 seconds to lift off, passengers were turning to each other saying, would you believe it? It was evident that, as you might expect, many passengers had been concerned at some time with the number of miles a car could travel on a given amount of gas. Educators are in common agreement on this concept of communication, even though few teachers use it. But after all, there are only a few real teachers in that profession. An educational leader makes this point of understanding and experience in a very personal way. When he has had experience of life, read Homer and Horace by all means, says Newman. Feed mind and eye and ear with their images and language and music, but do not expect to understand what they are really talking about before you are 40. This truth was first brought home to me more than 30 years ago, one December day, as I walked down the road from Argentiers to Shamanics after a snowfall. And suddenly, from the abyss of unconscious memory, a line of Virgil rose into my mind, and I found myself repeating that I had read the words at school and no doubt translated them glibly. The earth lies formless under snowdrifts and deep frost. But suddenly, with the snow scene before my eyes, I perceived for the first time what Virgil meant by the epithet informis, without form, and how perfectly it describes the work of snow, which literally does make the world formless, blurring the sharp outlines of roofs and eaves, of pines and rocks and mountain ridges, taking from them their definiteness of shape and form. Yet, how many times before that day had I read the words without seeing what they really mean? It is not that the word informis meant nothing to me when I was an undergraduate, but it meant much less than its full meaning. Personal experience was necessary to real understanding. Sir Richard Livingston on Education, New York, 1945, page 13. Every now and then I have been accused of being crude and vulgar because I have used analogies of sex or the toilet. I do not do this because I want to shock particularly, but because there are certain experiences common to all, and sex and toilet are two of them. Furthermore, everyone is interested in those two, which can't be said of every common experience. I remember explaining relativity in morals by telling the following story. A question is put to three women, one American, one British, and one French. What would they do if they found themselves shipwrecked on a desert island with six sex hungry men? The American woman said she would try to hide and build a raft at night or send up smoke signals in order to escape. What a prude. The British woman said she would pick the strongest man and shack up with him so that he could protect her from the others. The French woman looked up quizzically and asked, "What's the problem?" Since people understand only in terms of their own experience, an organizer must have at least a cursory familiarity with their experiences. It not only serves communication, but it strengthens the personal identification of the organizer with the others and facilitates further communication. For example, in one community, there was a Greek Orthodox priest who will be called here the Archimandrite Anastopoulos. Every Saturday night, faithfully followed by six of his church members, he would tour the local taverns. After some hours of imbibing, he would suddenly stiffen and become so drunk that he was paralyzed. At this point, his faithful six, like pallbearers, would carry him through the streets back to the safety of his church. Over the years, it became part of the community's experience, in fact, a living legend. In talking to anyone in that neighborhood, you could not communicate the fact that something was out of place, not with it, except to say it was out like the Archimandrite. The response would be laughter, nodding of heads, and yeah, we know what you mean, but also an intimacy of sharing a common experience. When you are trying to communicate and can't find the point in the experience of the other party at which he can receive and understand, then you must create the experience for him. I was trying to explain to two staff organizers in training how their problems in their community arose because they had gone outside the experience of their people. That when you go outside anyone's experience, not only do you not communicate, you cause confusion. They had earnest, intelligent expressions on their faces and were verbally and visually agreeing and understanding, but I knew they really didn't understand and that I was not communicating. I had not got into their experience, so I had to give them an experience. We were having lunch in a restaurant at the time. I called their attention to the luncheon menu, listing 8 items or combinations, and all numbered. Item number 1 was bacon and eggs, potatoes, toast, and coffee. Item number 2, something else. And item number 6 was a chicken liver omelet. I explained that the waiter was conditioned in terms of his experience to immediately translate any order into its accompanying number. He would listen to the words bacon and eggs, etc., but his mind had already clicked number 1. The only variation was whether the eggs were to be done easy or the bacon very crisp, in which case he would call out number 1 easy or a variation thereof. With this clear, I said, now, when the waiter takes my order, instead of my saying a chicken liver omelet, which to him is number 6, I will go outside his area of experience and say, "You see this chicken liver omelet?" He will respond, "Yes, number 6." I will say, "Well, just a minute. I don't want the chicken livers in the omelet. I want the omelet with the chicken livers on the side. Now, is that clear?" He will say it is, and then the odds are 9-1. Everything is going to get screwed up because he can't just order number 6 anymore. I don't know what will happen, but I have gone outside his accepted area of experience. The waiter took my order precisely as I have described above. In about 20 minutes, he returned with an omelet and a full order of chicken livers, as well as a bill for $3.25, $1.75 for the omelet, and $1.50 for the chicken livers. I objected and immediately took issue, pointing out that all I had wanted was number 6, the total price of which was $1.50, but that instead of having the livers mixed in with the omelet, I had wanted them on the side. Now there was a full omelet, a full order of chicken livers, and a bill for nearly 3 times the menu price. Furthermore, I could not eat a full order of chicken livers as well as the omelet. Confusion came down. Waiter and manager huddled. Finally, the waiter returned, flushed and upset. "Sorry about the mistake. Everybody got mixed up. Eat whatever you want." The bill was changed back to the original price for number 6. In a similar situation in Los Angeles, 4 staff
This
members and I.
this
Go ahead.
reminds me of that scene from I think it's called Five Simple Pieces or Five Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson,
Hmm?
where he's in the restaurant and he's like he wants to order something that's like not directly on the menu, so he has to like order something and then like remove everything, which is kind of a funny scene. But you could also just like read it as Saul Alinsky's class racism.
I thought you were going to go with back to Reservoir Dogs, where Mr. Pink's like, I don't tip.
I want number six. Look what she did.
I just had coffee. Why would I tip?
Confusion shouldn't be in a waitress's vocabulary. Outside my experience, shouldn't be in her vocabulary.
All I had was coffee. Yeah, she refilled your coffee. I don't care if she refilled my coffee. That's her job. Why am I going to tip her for doing her job? If she wants to make more money, she can get a better job. In a similar situation in Los Angeles, four staff members and I were talking in front of the not Baltimore, Biltmore Hotel when I demonstrated the same point, saying, "Look, I am holding a $10 bill in my hand. I propose to walk around the Biltmore Hotel, a total of 4 blocks, and try to give it away. This will certainly be outside of everyone's experience. You four walk behind me and watch the faces of the people I'll approach. I am going to go up to them, holding out this $10 bill, and say, 'Here, take this.' My guess is that everyone will back off, look confused, insulted, or fearful, and want to get away from this nut fast. From their experience, when someone approaches them, he is either out to ask for instructions or to panhandle, particularly the way I'm dressed, no coat or tie. I walked around trying to give the $10 bill away. The reactions were all within the experiences of the people. About three of them, seeing the $10 bill, spoke first. 'I'm sorry, I don't have any change.' Others hurried past. 'I'm sorry, I don't have any money on me right now,' as though I had been trying to get money from them instead of trying to give them money. One young woman flared up, almost screaming, 'I'm not that kind of a girl, and if you don't get away from here, I'll call a cop.' Another woman in her 30s snarled, 'I don't come that cheap.' I mean, I guess if you were eating breakfast for $1.50, maybe you could get a chick for $10. I don't know. There was
Also,
one.
if he had been outside the Baltimore hotel, the first guy would have just taken the
They
money.
would have just taken the money. He wouldn't even gotten the money out of his pocket before they took the money. That's what I was thinking. Go to a Love's truck stop in any city in the nation. Somebody's going to take that money from you. There was one man who stopped and said, "What kind of con game is this?" and then walked away. Most of the people responded with shock, confusion, and silence, and then quickened their pace and sort of walked around me. After approximately 14 people, I found myself back at the front entrance of the Biltmore Hotel, still holding my $10 bill. My four companions had then a clear understanding of the concept that people react strictly on the basis of their own experience. For another example of the same principle, here's a Christian civilization where most people have gone to church and have mouthed various Christian doctrines, and yet this is really not part of their experience because they haven't lived it. Their church experience has been purely a ritualistic decoration. The New York Times some years ago reported the case of a man who converted to Catholicism at around the age of 40 and then, filled with the zeal of a convert, determined to emulate as far as possible the life of St. Francis of Assisi. He withdrew his life savings, about $2,300. He took this money out in $5 bills. Armed with his bundle of $5 bills, he went down to the poorest section of New York City, the Bowery. This was before the time of urban renewal. And every time a needy looking man or woman passed by him, he would step up and say, "Please take this." Now, the difference between this situation and mine around the Biltmore Hotel is that the panhandlers on the Bowery would not find an offer of money or of a bowl of soup outside their experience. At any rate, our friend, attempting to live a Christian life and emulate St. Francis of Assisi, found that he could do so for only 45 minutes before being arrested by a Christian police officer, driven to Bellevue Hospital by a Christian ambulance doctor, and pronounced non compos mentis by a Christian psychiatrist. Christianity is beyond the experience of a Christian professing but not practicing population. In mass organization, you can't go outside of people's actual experience. I've been asked, for example, why I never talked to a Catholic priest or a Protestant minister or a rabbi in terms of the Judeo Christian ethic, because it doesn't
Oh,
exist, or the Ten Commandments, or the Sermon on the Mount. I never talk in those terms. Instead, I approach them on the basis of their own self interest, the welfare of their church, even its physical property. If I approached them in a moralistic way, it would be outside their experience because Christianity and Judeo Christianity are outside of the experience of organized religion. They would just listen to me and very sympathetically tell me how noble I was. And the moment I walked out, they'd call their secretaries in and say, if that screwball ever shows up again, tell him I'm out. Communication for persuasion, as in negotiation, is more than entering the area of another person's experience. Excuse me. It is getting a fix on his main value or goal and holding your course on that target. You don't communicate with anyone purely on the rational facts or ethics of an issue. The episode between Moses and God when the Jews had begun to worship the golden calf is revealing. Moses did not try to communicate with God in terms of mercy or justice when God was angry and wanted to destroy the Jews. He moved in on a top value and outmaneuvered God. It is only when the other party is concerned or feels threatened that he will listen. In the arena of action, a threat or a crisis becomes almost a precondition to communicate. A great organizer like Moses never loses his cool, as a lesser man might have done when God said, go get thee down, thy people, whom thou hast brought out of the land of Egypt, hath sinned. At that point, if Moses had dropped his cool in any way, one would have expected him to reply, where do you get off with all that stuff about my people whom I brought out of the land of Egypt? I was just taking a walk through the desert, and who started that bush burning, and who told me to get over to Egypt, and who told me to get those people out of slavery, and who pulled all the power plays and all the plagues, and who split the Red Sea, and who put a pillar of clouds up in the sky, and now all of a sudden they become my people? But Moses kept his cool, and he knew that the most important center of his attack would have to be on what he judged to be God's prime value. As Moses read it, it was that God wanted to be number one. All through the Old Testament, one bumps into, there shall be no other gods before me. Thou shalt not worship false gods. I am a jealous and vindictive God. Thou shalt not use the Lord's name in vain. And so it goes on, including the first part of the Ten Commandments. Golly, this is terrible. Knowing this, Moses took off on his attack. He began arguing and telling God to cool it. At this point, trying to figure out Moses' motivations, one would wonder whether it was because he was loyal to his own people or felt sorry for them, or whether he just didn't want the job of breeding a whole new people, because after all, he was pushing 120, and that's asking a lot. At any rate, he began to negotiate, saying, look, God, you're God. You're holding all the cards. Whatever you want to do, you can do, and nobody can stop you. But you know, God, you just can't scratch that deal you've got with these people. You remember the covenant in which you promised them not only to take them out of slavery, but that they would practically inherit the earth. Yeah, I know you're going to tell me that they broke their end of it. Also, all bets are off. But it isn't that easy. You're in a spot. The news of this deal has leaked out all over the joint. The Egyptians, Philistines, Canaanites, everybody knows about it. But as I said before, you're God. Go ahead, knock them off. What do you care if people are going to say, there goes God? You can't believe anything he tells you. You can't make a deal with him. His word isn't even worth the stone it's written on. But after all, you're God, and I suppose you can handle it. And the Lord was appeased from doing the evil which he had spoken against his people. Yeah, but that's not why he was appeased, you moron. But whatever. Another maxim in effective communication is that people have to make their own decisions. It isn't just that Moses couldn't tell God what God should do. No organizer can tell a community either what to do. Much of the time, though, the organizer will have a pretty good idea of what the community should be doing, and he will want to suggest, maneuver, and persuade the community toward that action. He will not ever seem to tell the community what to do. Instead, he will use loaded questions. For example, in a meeting on tactics where the organizer is convinced that tactic Z is the thing to do. Organizer, what do you think we should do now? Community leader number one, I think we should do tactic X. Organizer, what do you think, leader number two? Leader number two, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Organizer, what about you, number three? Leader number three, well, I don't know. It sounds good, but something worries me. What do you think, organizer? Organizer, the important thing is what you guys think. What's the something that worries you? Leader number three, I don't know. It's something. Organizer, I got a hunch that I don't know, but I remember yesterday you and number one talking and explaining to me something about somebody who once tried something like Tactic X and it left him wide open because of this and that. So it didn't work or something. Remember telling me about that, number one? Leader number one, who has been listening and now knows Tactic X won't work. Sure, sure, I remember. Yeah, well, we all know X won't work. Organizer, yeah. We also know that unless we put out all the things that won't work, we'll never get to the one that will, right? Leader number one, fervently, absolutely. And so the guided questioning goes on without anyone losing face or being left out of the decision making. Every weakness of every proposed tactic is probed by questions. Eventually, someone suggests tactic Z, and again, through questions, its positive features emerge and it is decided on. Is this manipulation? Certainly, just as a teacher manipulates, and no less, even as Socrates. As time goes on and education proceeds, the leadership becomes increasingly sophisticated. The organizer recedes from the local circle of decision makers. His response to questions about what he thinks becomes a non directive counter question. What do you think? His job becomes one of weaning the group away from any dependency upon him. Then his job is done. While the organizer proceeds on the basis of questions, the community leaders always regard his judgment above their own. They believe that he knows his job. He knows the right tactics. That's why he is their organizer. The organizer knows that even if they feel that way consciously, if he starts issuing orders and explaining, it would begin to build up a subconscious resentment, a feeling that the organizer is putting them down, is not respecting their dignity as individuals. The organizer knows that it is a human characteristic that someone who asks for help and gets it reacts not only with gratitude, but with a subconscious hostility toward the one who helped him. It is a sort of psychic original sin because he feels that the one who helped him is always aware that if it hadn't been for his help, he would still be a defeated nothing. All this involves a skillful and sensitive role playing on the part of the organizer. In the beginning, the organizer is the general. He knows where, what, and how, but he never wears his 4 stars, never is addressed as, nor acts as a general. He is an organizer. There are times, too plenty of them, when the organizer discovers in the course of discussions like the one above that tactic Z or whatever it was he decided on ahead of time is not the appropriate tactic. At this point, let's hope his ego is strong enough to allow someone else to have the answer. One of the factors that changes what you can and can't communicate is relationships. There are sensitive areas that one does not touch until there is a strong personal relationship based on common involvements. Otherwise, the other party turns off and literally does not hear, regardless of whether your words are within his experience. Conversely, if you have a good relationship, he is very receptive and your message comes through in a positive context. For example, I met a woman yesterday and I asked her to divorce her husband. She freaked out on me and maced me. No, I'm just kidding. For example, I have always believed that birth control and abortion are personal rights to be exercised by the individual. If in my early days, when I organized the back of the yards neighborhood in Chicago, which was 95% Roman Catholic, I had tried to communicate this even through the experience of the residents, whose economic plight was aggravated by large families. That would have been the end of my relationship with the community. That instant, I would have been stamped as an enemy of the church and all communication would have ceased. Some years later, after establishing solid relationships, I was free to talk about anything, including birth control. I remember discussing it with the then Catholic chancellor. By then, the argument was no longer limited to such questions as how much longer do you think the Catholic Church can hang on to this archaic notion and still survive? I remember seeing five priests in the waiting room who wanted to see the chancellor, and knowing his contempt for each one of them, I said, "Look, I'll prove to you that you do really believe in birth control, even though you're making all kinds of noises against it." And then I opened the door saying, "Take a look out there. Can you look at them and tell me you oppose birth control?" He cracked up and said, "That's an unfair argument, and you know it, but the subject and nature of the discussion would have been unthinkable without that solid relationship." A classic example of the failure to communicate because the organizer has gone completely outside the experience of the people is the attempt by campus activists to indicate to the poor the bankruptcy of their prevailing values. Take my word for it. If you get a good job in a split level ranch house out in the suburbs, a color TV, two cars, and money in the bank, that just won't bring you happiness. The response without exception is always, "Yeah, let me be the judge of that one. I'll let you know after I get it." Communication on a general basis without being fractured into the specifics of experience becomes rhetoric, and it carries a very limited meaning. It is the difference between being informed of the death of 250,000 people, which becomes a statistic, or the death of one or two close friends or loved ones or members of one's family. In the latter, it becomes the full emotional impact of the finality of tragedy in trying to explain what the personal relationship means. I have told various audiences, if the chairman of this meeting had opened up by saying, "I am shocked and sorry to have to report to you that we have just been notified that Mr. Alinsky has just been killed in a plane crash and therefore this lecture is canceled," the only reaction you would have would be, "Well, gee, that's too bad. I wonder what he was like, but oh well, let's see. What are we going to do this evening? We've got the evening free now. We could go to a movie." And that is all that one would expect, except of those who have known me in the past, regardless of what the relationship was. Now, suppose after finishing this lecture, let us assume that all of you have disagreed with everything I have said. You don't like my face, the sound of my voice, my manner, my clothes. You just don't like me, period. Let us further assume that I am to lecture to you again next week, and at that time you are informed of my sudden death. Your reaction will be very different, regardless of your dislike. You will react with shock. You will say, "Why, just yesterday he was alive, breathing, talking, and laughing. It just seems incredible to believe that suddenly, like that, he's gone." This is the human reaction to a personal relationship. What is of particular importance here, however, is the fact that you were dealing with one specific person and not a general mass. It is what was implicit in the reputed statement of that organizational genius Samuel Adams at the time when he was allegedly planning the Boston Massacre. He was quoted as saying that there ought to be no less than 3 or 4 killed so that we will have martyrs for the revolution. But there must be no more than 10, because after you get beyond that number, we no longer have martyrs, but simply a sewage problem. This is the problem in trying to communicate on the issue of the H bomb. It is too big. It involves too many casualties. It is beyond the experience of people, and they just react with, "Yeah, it is a terrible thing," but it really does not grip them. It is the same thing with figures. The moment one gets into the area of 25 million and above, let alone a billion, the listener is completely out of touch, no longer really interested because the figures have gone above his experience and almost are meaningless. That's why nobody cares about the debt. Millions of Americans
Word.
do not know how many millions of dollars make up a billion. This element of the specific that must be small enough to be grasped by the hands of experience ties very definitely into the whole scene of issues. Issues must be able to be communicated. It is essential that they can be communicated. It is essential that they be simple enough to be grasped as rallying or battle cries. They cannot be generalities like sin or immorality or the good life or morals. They must be this immorality of this slum landlord with this slum tenement where these people suffer. It should
Yeah,
be obvious by now, huh?
the the national debt too big, gas prices just right.
I can complain about those. I have to fill up every 2 days because of how far I drive for work. So I went from putting in like $28 every 2 days to $43 every 2 days. So I
Damn.
definitely notice. It should be obvious by now that communication occurs concretely by means of one specific experience. General theories become meaningful only when one has absorbed and understood the specific constituents and then related them back to a general concept. Unless this is done, the specifics become nothing more than a string of interesting anecdotes. That is the world as it is in communication. All right, there we go. Thoughts,
Well done,
recipes,
sir.
disasters.
Yeah, that was definitely a very repetitive chapter.
Yeah, well,
Chapter
like
about
the
communication is
last
not
three have been
great
like that. It's
communication.
yeah, the last three he's just been like it's like you can really tell you're getting into the propaganda aspect of the book. Like, because he just starts like needling specific points over and over and over. And you're like, all right, dude, I get it. You're trying to brainwash me. Unfortunately, my brain has already been washed long before I met you.
Saul Alinsky re-education protocol.
No shit. But I can
Until
see how
now,
this stuff works with people. Like, if they have nothing else, you know,
yeah, their life has just been a series of happenings, and now
like this,
he's giving
this,
them experience.
yeah, he's giving them meaning. He's giving them a way to discover meaning within themselves. Be a political activist, change the world, change your local elections, change the dynamics of your local social hierarchy, change the economics of your local jurisdiction, and like suddenly you feel important because you're making changes, you're doing things in the world, physical, concrete things, maternal things. When you've been searching for the paternal, you end up doing the maternal. All right. Well, we will pick this back up next week, I think.
Sounds great, brother.
Yeah. Well, this one was fun. This one was a lot more mockery and just ridicule on my part. I didn't really, there wasn't a whole lot of like big insights to like poke and prod into and dig into. He's just kind of telling you how to find people to propagandize, which is like, all right, this is probably like the most boring portion of the book.
Like Scott's riffing on Abraham Lincoln. You can only fool some of the people all the time, and that's who you should concentrate on.
All right. Well, plug your podcast and everything. Have you been writing anything lately?
So the podcast is Anarchic Areopagita. Right now, you can find it on YouTube, and I've got some writing in the works, some articles for the institute that should be coming out this month or early next month. So always be checking the Libertarian Institute every day because we got a lot of great writers there writing a lot of great stuff.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. One of these days, I'll actually sit down and start writing again. Lent, like, really just interrupted my writing. I got sick, and then Lent started, and I was just like, yeah, like, I'm not writing anytime soon. So we're almost done. We're in the final few days. So
Well, due to gas prices, it's going to be a just walk summer. So you can
yeah,
just
well,
write.
yeah, yeah. Right boy summer, not a white boy summer.
Right power.
All right, man. I'm gonna stop the recording.
All right, Tommy.
Uh,